The fifth item added to the agenda tonight is the education resolution that was read aloud by Commissioner Brown. I so move.
Mr. Chair, I serve on Education Committee, and this is a much easier resolution to adopt than what was presented to us in education, but because time ran out, this was moved after an hour meeting to old business. So I would like to make an amendment just in light of transparency that this go back to education for discussion, that we defer this back to Education Committee and give citizens the opportunity to read through this and to understand this.
Record your vote.
We will deal with the main motion here tonight. Now, the amendment.
The process that the school system follows, the book was removed. They follow the process. It was removed. I don't think anybody thought that it should be on the shelves. Now, how did it get on the shelves to begin with? I am actually very, very curious about that. My understanding is that the publisher of that book, who sent out the synopsis or the material literature on that book, failed to, mention that section or that topic or whatever anywhere in that material. So, unfortunately, obviously, it slipped through the cracks. I am happy that the process that the school system has in place removed it quickly. I don't know why it was identified and waited a week or two or whatever the time period was before it got brought up to the school board. Because if I found a book like this, I would immediately bring it to attention and I would want it removed ASAP. Like I wouldn't want to wait a week or two to bring it up in a meeting, public forum. Are we specifically talking about the schools where this book was, or we're just saying this is in general every school within the county? Because the language changed, right? From, are we saying that, so the be it resolved isn't really focused on Lawn Boy being in the schools. This is just saying, hey, we want the director of schools and the chief academic officer, all of the principals, all of the librarians to be strongly encouraged to ensure the school environment is free from obscene and provocative material. Is that, well, because the original wording, and again, I didn't get this till tonight.
I'm not entering into the debate, but to me, it seems so simple. We're merely asking the commission to state a view on whether this kind of literature should be in the public school system of Sumner County. That's all that's been asked for, and we could ask about, does this mean this? Does this mean that? It means, where do we stand on the issue? And it's just like you've already said, Mr. Becker, that you're opposed to it. That's all we're saying. By voting for this, we're for this or against it.
No, sir, with all due respect, that's not. Language matters. Words matter. If that's what we were saying, that's what you were talking about.
Exactly. And the language and the verbiage in that says nothing more than that. Commissioner Pomeroy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, you were, not what I was going to talk about, but language does matter. I would absolutely vote for something that says, as the county commission, we do not support or want any book like that in this library. That's not what this does. There's this whole other paragraph that you're defending saying that's not what it means. Like words don't mean anything. And then I got the guy who wrote it saying, well, that probably might mean a librarian. This is how we're writing policy now? Question, did this form pass Education Committee?
Well, first of all, this is
just
not
a question.
Policy. This is a statement.
This resolution, did this
resolution?
it's a resolution. Did this resolution pass Education Committee?
Commissioner Brown?
No, it did not. It went to old business.
Okay.
Did not pass. There was multiple previous copies of this that were examined during the time at different education committees?
No,
Or was this the only copy that ever existed?
no, they were working copies.
Working copies that were released. You know, it's 10:20. I've sat here and I often wondered for a second if any commissioners were even invited to go to planning commission meetings. If we could even show up where they do presentations and they pass things and, you know, they do this work at these committee meetings, but we just sit here and act like that doesn't happen. We just hash stuff out. We get stuff referred back. And then we get this put on our desk minutes before a meeting. And it's made to say, oh, well, it's so simple. If you don't support pornography, you would just vote for this. If you don't, same thing that the playbook says on the other side when people up here saying, well, if you don't vote for a tax increase, you hate children. Just the other way around. We vet stuff, vet stuff, vet stuff. We make planning director get up here and go through a slideshow that was through multiple meetings, present it, neighbors. We just, but if somebody just posts a resolution that he puts on your desk a minute before and says, I want to add it, and no, it didn't pass, and no, it wasn't vetted, but somehow there'll be 14 votes that say, well, yeah, that's exactly the most transparent, best thing we can do. And for our chairperson to just try to sum it up by saying,
Mr.
I'm just-
Pomeroy,
by saying-
you have identified a commissioner, and that is against the rules.
okay, excuse me, for the conversation to go to, the words of this do not matter. It simply just says this. Even though we have another commissioner saying, no, I want clarification to this, don't worry about what that says. It simply says this. That's not what it simply says. It simply says a whole lot more than that. I am against this book. Bring me a resolution that says this Sumner County body does not want any pornographic books in our libraries. That is our stance. I would vote for it in a second. But we put all this further, it be resolved, and I think maybe an executive might be a librarian, it might be a principal. We just put this language in there and we say, we're going to put that out there. We just overstep and then just to sweep it because that's what you want to do. It's just, but by gosh, let's not let a guy get his duplex legal without just running him through the coals for an hour.
Well, you know, I'm not debating this issue. I can merely say that it's a clear-cut issue in my mind, and it's a clear-cut issue in your mind. I am opposed to filth, and that's all this is. And it begs me to look at this and to see that we have actually. Yes, I am. I'm debating it. So I'm clarifying what he said. So if you will please be quiet, Commissioner Wynn. For us to sit here as a commission and ask the children to leave this room when they could go to the library and get this material, I'm sorry, I'm totally opposed to it. And I probably said more than I should for clarification, but it's pretty plain to me. Commissioner Ring.
Thank you, sir. A couple of things. Number one, this book is not in any school in Sumner County Library. It's not in a single Sumner County library. It's already been removed. The school board has a procedure. If you don't like a book, or if you feel a book is objectionable, you make a complaint to the Board of Education, and they have a procedure to go through with this, which is put together by the state legislature. So that's it. There's also, in citizen comments, a couple of citizens mentioned that we are outside of our lane. They were absolutely correct. This is not part of what we should be doing as a county commission. We cannot tell the Board of Education to set up committees. They're the only ones who can do that. This is not something we should be dealing with. That book doesn't need to be in public school libraries. It's not in school libraries. But this is going into other books which have just kind of thrown out names of other books. But I believe this is not something we should be doing as a commission. This should be up to the Board of Education to deal with. That's why we elect them. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
Commissioner Ring is correct. We cannot tell them what to do. We can strongly encourage, though. And I wanted to clarify a point for the public and for Commissioner Becker. I agree with him also that if it was up to me, I would have pulled that book instantly as soon as it was found out about. That question was posed to the school board. They voted not to. They voted to let it go through its however long it takes procedure while it sat on the shelf. That's why we have to do these things. It's ridiculous that we have to, but we have to because they won't do the right thing. You said the right thing to do would be to pull it instantly while it awaited review. That's what I would have done. Let it go through its procedure. But while it's in violation of Tennessee state law, the obvious, blatant, word-for-word violation, there's no interpretation there. It sat there, and they allowed it. That's why we have to do things like this, and I have no problem with it. So I'll be voting for it.
I appreciate you, Commissioner Sho, for, I think we're all trying to make an attempt here to say we don't want this. And I've talked to Commissioner Sho once on one occasion. I think his heart is that. He doesn't want this. We don't. We just, the point I was trying to make, and when it comes to this is, as Commissioner Sullivan said, the original main motion was to send this thing back to committee, and we're trying to edit it on the floor. We've sent a lot of stuff back to committee. I'm saying all the extra interjection, there's a state law. Am I wrong? That first part is the state law of this resolution, correct? And it's very, very detailed. Maybe I'm just a simple, not real educated guy. But my amendment would be, why could we not put we as a county commission, be it resolved, strongly suggest, or whatever your wording is, that you follow this state law. Everything else is just conjecture, and we don't know process. We don't know who does it. We're not the board who does do it. I appreciate your attempt to say who the central, but we don't need some librarian over at some elementary school getting called in because we don't know any of that. It's not our role. And I'm not trying to be argumentative with everybody. I get it. We all want to get stuff done, but we still have to operate in some frameworks of what we can get done. You know, and I sat on this commission once with the chairman and a few others, when we had a resolution literally come from us about us wanting to vote on abortion. Well, I am as pro-life as they can get, but I don't think the county commission's going to vote on abortion. Like, we're sitting here writing things minutes before meetings, and I appreciate your attempt, and I know you're bright enough that if given the time to send it back to committee, we could probably come up with some language that we all agree upon, made out there in the public, that we could get, and everybody be happy with what we send over. But we hear about transparency, something being thrown to your desk at 6:58, and then debate it on the floor is not that.
Pomeroy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I think this is about the main thing. We did call up the number 2 man in our school system is here. I have some questions I would like to ask him. From what I know, no one has ruled that there was a violation. I don't know if the state has ruled that. I just don't have the answer to these questions, and I feel like that gets respected when certain people ask them. But the director of schools, assistant director of school, don't know your title, sorry, is here. We obviously have some questions, but I have some real questions about, again, language that we are stating, whereas a violation. This all started an hour ago with Commissioner Becker saying, who determined there was a violation? And we were just basically told to shut up. Like, no, don't ask that question. Like, has the school board been given a violation? Has the state done any of this? Or are we treading in that area where we are dictating law? As an opinion, that's what we're saying. We don't say an opinion, we say whereas a violation. I would like to ask the man with the school system here. We also have talked about where the buck stops. I've heard other commissioners say stops at the top. There's the number 2 guy. Can I ask him a couple questions?
Do you choose to speak, Mr. Langford?
Yes, sir, I'll be happy.
Thank you, Mr. Langford, for being here and being here all night. We've had a lot of conversation about what goes on at the school board and what we do, and so I just want to, we have a resolution here in front of us that you probably know that states that whereas a violation of TCA 3917-911 was found, we started off with a question: was there a violation? Who made this violation? Was the Sumner County School Board found in violation? Can you answer that question if y'all been issued a violation by the State Board of Education, or who would be your governing body? No, sir.
No, sir. No, we, as soon as the challenge was made at the school board meeting, the book was treated like we do all books whenever there's a challenge. The school, the 2 schools where the book was on the shelf, put together the review team according to board policy. They reviewed the book. They removed it, deeming that it was obscene, and so it's removed from the shelves in all the schools in Sumner County.
Do you know how the book got through in the first place? Have y'all done a self-audit or a self-examination of that process?
Yeah, I think we constantly do that. I mean, you know, I think I mean, first I would say, like, in terms of the language on, and I don't want to get into the resolution, that's y'all's work, but I would say, like, if you're wanting the specific language, the only clarification I would ask is when you're talking about, you know, for Mr. Schoaf's motion, about senior central office positions, that would include maintenance, HR, finance, things that have absolutely nothing to do with library books. I mean, honestly, if you want to name who at the central office is responsible for library books, it's primarily me. And of course, if you wanted to include Dr. Phillips, but I mean, I think it would be unfair to list for action other departments that don't really have anything to do with library books, like maintenance, technology, things like that.
That's my next question, so thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, like, in terms of purchasing, you know, our librarians do the best that they can. Librarians in schools work together. They review books periodically. Obviously, this one we didn't catch, and as soon as it was brought to our attention, we followed our process, and I think that process is key, because you can have, like, in a community as diverse as ours, with as many people moving in from all over the country and world, you can have a lot of divergent opinions about what's appropriate. And to be fair, you need to review those and follow the process that we've set forward. So this book was removed within a week from both of the schools, but we followed our process. So if there's a lawsuit, because obscenity laws, if you study case law of Supreme Court, obscenity is really hard to remove something like at the Supreme Court level. Almost nothing at the Supreme Court level is deemed obscene. What we try to do is get books that are appropriate in front of kids, and when we make a mistake, when we miss something, we remove it as quickly as possible. And that's why we have a process. Like, our encouragement is always to work school, central office, parents, teachers, librarians, principals, everybody. I find some of the things tonight a little bit chilling towards our librarians, because they're really working hard to get, not a single one of our librarians wants to put something inappropriate in front of kids, and they're working hard you know, to follow state law. But no, there's not been any kind of violation of state law.
Okay, I've just got a few more. I just want to kind of go paragraph to paragraph. I do thank you. This book was found in high school libraries, is that correct?
Yes, sir, in two high school
Not
libraries.
found in any elementary school libraries?
No, sir.
However, we felt the need to read it on the worldwide internet and in front of elementary school age students in our audience. Some mistakes are more egregious than others, I guess. It says here, whereas the administration and the Board of Education Summer School have failed to comply with Tennessee law. Have y'all been notified by the state, or are you under any prosecution? Are you under any review that you failed willingly failed to notify and comply with Tennessee state law.
We have not violated Tennessee state law.
Well, that's what it says in our resolution. That's concerning to me. I'm just reading and talking. I'm asking questions, getting answered.
Commissioner Jones, I have given some leeway to the other commissioners to read and speak, so I understand what you're saying, but
I want to be clear, that's not an opinion. Mr. Langford, is this an opinion? Is the Sumner County Board of Education been under investigation, have failed to comply with Tennessee state law?
We have not.
Thank you, that's not an opinion. We have in our resolution, whereas statements by some individuals of your staff and administrative personnel indeed appear to argue for direct defiance of Tennessee state law. That you know of, do you have any staff members that are currently asking you to change this state law to allow this book to be put in the library?
No, sir, not to my knowledge.
Are there any complaints or formal complaints against y'all wanting to put this by an employee?
No, sir.
Okay. Again, we have committees, we have language. Commissioner Becker put out a good thing that says that we support laws that are very, very clear. Language and words matter. And it's really, really a sad state when we don't think they do and say, well, it doesn't matter that we say whereas they violated a law. It doesn't matter where we say whereas they have failed to comply with law, whereas they are in. That matters. And it doesn't just matter to this issue, it matters to whatever axe to grind someone has one day with something else, and they just want to put language in there saying this is what we believe, even though it's not factual. Thank you for answering my questions. I know that you're available for anybody else, I believe.
I'm going to ask the question that I believe my fellow commissioner should have asked. Have you been reprimanded by anybody at the state level for violating the law?
No.
It is your opinion that you're not in violation of the law because you have not been adjudicated against. Is that correct?
No, we're not in violation of the law because we followed the law and our procedure. As soon as the book was raised at the school board meeting, we treated that as a challenge, and we went through our process that we use whenever there's a challenge to a book.
I understand that the process, but the Tennessee state law was standing, and it was currently in violation for up to a week, you said, before your process took place. It was a very easy ask at the board meeting to pull the book to be in compliance with state law while it was being reviewed. But the school board chose not to do that. They were in violation of the law by the letter of the law. Its exact description of that book is why the law was written. And I feel like you probably used that law in some of your interpretation of what you should do with the ruling on the committee that in the end did. The law had to influence that, and you deemed that it should not be there. But for a week it stood, and it was in violation of the law. You just never were adjudicated against. So what I'm saying is it's your opinion that you weren't in violation, but we'll never know because there was never a judgment given.
I'll be happy to answer that if I can speak. Actually, both books were removed because you had to review it. So in order to review it, librarians, principal, everybody had the time. So the books were removed the next day after the board meeting. The board did not choose to not take action on it. The board chose to not to add it to the agenda at the last minute when board members didn't have proper time to read or vet. Basically, you had a report from an individual. None of the other school board members, I'm just repeating, the minutes are available, it's on video. What we did is we immediately started our process after the board meeting. We contacted principals and asked them to start the review process. So the books were out the next morning. Actually, the librarian at Liberty Creek went back to the school that night to make sure that it wasn't on the shelf because it had came in as an order. She caught it and pulled it, but it went into the system. So our librarians worked and our schools worked very fast, and then we followed our procedure. So I disagree with your interpretation. One, we followed the advice of our legal counsel, who said we were not in violation of state law. We removed the book while it could be reviewed for obscenity, and then we followed our policy, and the book has not been on the shelf since the day after the board meeting as soon as school started. We did not ask anyone to come in at 11 o'clock at night when we got done with the board meeting to remove the book, but we did address it the next morning.
Okay. There was one book that was checked out. Was that not correct during that time period? At Gallatin, I believe it was.
I believe it was checked out to the principal or something like that. I don't think it was, it may have been with a kid, I don't know.
I read that
yeah.
it was about from a
Yeah,
kid.
but
that
both
checked
books
it
were
out.
taken off the shelf very quickly. Clarify, I got an answer for Mr. Jones' question, if I could answer it real
Yes,
quickly.
go ahead.
And then I'll come, Mr. Jones, it was checked out by the Gallatin High School librarian, it was not checked out by a student. She pulled it off the shelf, but she checked it out to herself.
Commissioner Brown.
At the last school board meeting, not the work study, a place inside of me was on the agenda, correct?
Are you talking about the last board meeting or the last study
Last
session?
board meeting.
Last board, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, there were a number of people that got up and spoke in favor of that book, correct?
That's correct.
So, there again, considering the law 4906, 1019, there's a lot of illustrations in there that are anti-American, advocating overthrow of the government, things like that. So, whenever it says statements by some individual staff and administrative personnel indeed appear to argue for direct defiance of Tennessee law.
I think that that's your opinion of the interpretation. I think that some of the language that I saw in one of the working resolutions through the committee, where you specifically mentioned that librarians needed to be disciplined for being defiant, I personally find that chilling to the First Amendment, because a librarian has every right to come and speak for or against a book, just as you have every right to come and speak. And I think that's really, it highlights the need for a process so that we can get people, parents, teachers, librarians, principals at the school level to look to see if it fits the needs of the kids at that area, because you have a very strong opinion about that book. I would argue that there are plenty of other people in our community that don't. I'm trying to arbiter the debate so that we get what's best for our kids at the right age levels. You and I can disagree. I don't even know, like, but I find it chilling to put in a resolution that we're going to discipline people or ask for discipline, because in your working document that someone forwarded to me, it very clearly states that you wanted librarians disciplined for being defiant with a letter of reprimand so they would be less employable in other school districts. That part I find chilling, because they should be able to talk.
Now, I also find chilling the fact that this is a situation where these librarians speak on their behalf, but these are books that were for 5 to 7-year-olds. And 5 to 7-year-olds overthrowing the government?
Let's clarify, these books would not include Longboy. This book would be a place inside me.
That is my biggest problem right there, is that this was a book for 5 to 7-year-olds.
And that's why we have a review process.
And like I say, okay.
Yeah, that's why the school board we'll hear it again tomorrow night.
Commissioner, record your vote. Anyone wishing to change your vote?
And the motion passes with 15 votes.